Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going deep into the world of ad tech with, you guessed it, the trade desk, TTD, for those of you on Wall Street. We've got, well, actually a pretty recent analyst report, and you want to know if it's, a good investment or not. Let's unpack it. Right off the bat, some interesting points. The trade desk, they just had their first earnings miss in, wait for it, 8 years? I mean, that's a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, that's huge, especially for a company like TTD.
Exactly. But here's the thing, get this. A lot of analysts are still super bullish on TTD. Like some are even raising their price targets.
Pretty fascinating, isn't it?
Totally.
You've got this company that's been like, the Wall Street darling, golden child, whatever you want to call it, for years, and then bam, suddenly they trip up. But the analysts aren't like jumping ship.
That's what's so interesting, right? So why is that?
Well, I think to understand why, we really need to kind of like dig into what actually caused that earnings miss. And the report, it really emphasizes that it wasn't like some big external factor. It wasn't the competition coming in and stealing their lunch.
Right.
It was actually internal, like execution issues, things they could control.
Oh, so almost like they kind of tripped on their own shoelaces.
Yeah.
Rather than getting tackled by a competitor.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And that's actually, potentially good news because it suggests that the problem might be fixable. It's not like some, insurmountable external force.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
But so have they just been like sitting around since then, licking their wounds?
No, not at all. In fact, they've been really busy implementing some pretty major change. Like they've done this complete restructuring of the company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's all about streamlining operations, making sure everyone's roles are really clear, and just becoming more efficient overall.
Okay, so they're trying to like get lean and mean, really focus on efficiency.
Exactly. And they've also shifted to a more agile approach to product development.
Agile, huh? So what does that look like in practice?
Basically, they've got these smaller teams that are working on like weekly updates so they can adapt to changes much faster, improve their products on the fly.
Oh, so they're trying to become more nimble, able to respond to the market really quickly.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Interesting. So restructuring, agile development. What else have they been doing to get back on track?
Well, they're also like doubling down on relationships with these, big brands. They're doing this through these things called joint business plans. JBPs for short.
JBPs, okay.
Yeah. So think of them as like strategic partnerships. So TTD works really closely with these major advertisers to develop, custom solutions and really make sure they're getting the most out of their ad spending.
So it's like they're saying, hey, big spender, let's team up and make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck.
Exactly.
I mean, that's smart.
Right.
Makes sense.
And it's actually paying off. The report, it highlights that these JDPs are growing like 50% faster than the rest of TTD's business.
Whoa, 50%. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it tells us that they're not just, attracting these big clients, but they're actually keeping them happy and spending more.
Right. That's key. Keeping those big spenders happy.
Exactly. That's, I think, a really positive sign for TTD's future.
Okay, so we've got the restructuring, the agile development, the focus on JBPs. It sounds like they're really trying to make some serious moves to get back on track.
Yeah.
Now, the report also mentions that TTD is going all in on, a few key growth areas, right? So they're looking at connected TV, also known as CTV, audio advertising, and then retail media. Now, I get it. These are all kind of buzzwords, but for the average person out there, what do they actually mean? Like, what's the practical impact?
Well, think about how people consume media today. You're probably streaming shows on platforms like Netflix or Hulu, right?
Oh, for sure, all the time.
Exactly. And then listening to music on Spotify, podcasts, and you're definitely probably shopping online more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, who isn't these days?
So these are the areas that TTD is really targeting. They're betting big on the continued growth of these platforms and, the advertising opportunities that come with them.
Gotcha. So they're following the eyeballs, basically. Wherever people are spending their time and attention, that's what TTD wants to be.
Right. But there's also like a bigger picture here. TTD is essentially, betting against companies like Google and Facebook, the quote unquote walled gardens, as they're often called.
Yeah, the big guys.
Exactly. These companies, they control, vast amounts of user data within their own ecosystems. But TTD, they're championing the open internet. It's like a more transparent, diverse landscape for advertising.
So they're like, I don't know, the David going up against the Goliaths of the tech world. But isn't that, a pretty risky bet?
I mean, it's definitely a bold move going up against giants like Google and Facebook. But, they're not just throwing punches randomly. They're being strategic about it.
Right.
Like, take their acquisition of Sincera, for example.
Sincero.
Right. So Sincera, they help improve the supply chain of digital ads by providing like better data and transparency. So it's all about creating a more efficient and effective advertising ecosystem.
So they're trying to build a better mousetrap, so to speak.
Precisely. And they're not just stopping there. They've also invested quite heavily in AI with their Kokai platform.
Okay, Kokai. So what is that?
This is their like next generation technology. It's using AI for everything. I mean, we're talking from ad targeting to campaign optimization, performance forecasting, all that good stuff.
So it's like, instead of just throwing ads out there and hoping they stick, they're using AI to really target the right people with the right message at the right time.
Right. It's like imagine being able to predict which ads are going to, resonate with you specifically before they're even shown. Like that's the level of granularity and personalization that TTD is aiming for with Kokai.
That's pretty impressive. It sounds like they're really betting that AI is going to be like the key to making advertising, smarter and more effective in the future.
They are. And in fact, they're planning a full migration to Kokai in 2025. So it's a big deal for them.
Wow, that's a huge bet on AI. But, this report isn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? There's some potential risks and concerns highlighted as well. What are some of the things that, could trip TTD up along the way?
You're right. No investment is without risk, right? I mean, one of the biggest concerns is execution risk. It's like, can they actually fix those internal issues that led to that recent earnings miss? The restructuring they've undertaken, it's a big gamble. There's no guarantee that it's going to work perfectly.
So there's a chance they could, I don't know, stumble again even after making all these changes.
There's always a chance, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something to consider.
Okay, so execution risk is one thing. What else is on the radar?
Well, they've got some pretty serious competition, especially from Amazon.
Oh, yeah, of course, Amazon.
Right. Amazon is a behemoth in the advertising space, and they are not afraid to flex their muscles. So the question is, can TTD really compete with a company that has, the resources and the reach of Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon is a whole different beast, so that's a big question mark for sure.
Mhm.
Anything else keeping those analysts up at night?
Well, there's the looming economic downturn that everyone's talking about.
Oh, right. Can't forget about that.
Yeah, I mean, we know it's coming. It's just a matter of when, right? And if brands start, really slashing their advertising budgets to save money, that could have a significant impact on TTD's revenue.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the big question is, can TTD weather the storm if the economy takes a turn for the worse?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Now, historically, TTD has shown that they can be resilient. Like, they've actually consistently outperformed expectations, even during, tougher economic times. But, of course, there's never any guarantee that that's going to happen again.
Okay, so we've got these risks, right? Like potential execution hiccups, fierce competition from Amazon, and, oh yeah, that economic downturn that could really, like, hit their clients' ad budgets hard. I mean, that's a lot to, to juggle, to keep track of. What's your overall take on, like, how serious these risks really are?
It's a mixed bag for sure. Each risk, I think, carries a different weight. But it's important to remember that, like, every investment has some level of risk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's okay.
What matters is weighing those risks against the potential rewards. And with TTD, I think the growth potential is still quite significant, especially if their bets on, CTV, audio, and retail media, if those actually pay off.
Yeah, if those hit, it could be huge for them. Okay, so let's talk numbers. The report, it actually gives us some pretty specific guidance for Q1 2025. What's the outlook looking like?
Well, they're projecting at least $575 million in revenue for Q1 2025, which would be like a 17% year-over-year increase.
17%. Okay, so not too shabby, especially considering, all those potential headwinds we just talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
So a bit of a slowdown compared to, their crazy historical growth, but still, still in positive territory, which is good.
Yeah.
What about their profitability? What's the story with their EBITDA?
Yeah, so for Q1 2025, they're expecting adjusted EBITDA of around $145 million. So again, this is showing growth, but maybe a bit of a more moderate pace than what we've seen from them in the past.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, here's something I thought was kind of interesting. They didn't actually give any full year revenue guidance, which I thought was a little bit strange. Any thoughts on why they might be like holding back on that?
That is a great observation. It could suggest that there's still a bit of uncertainty about how the rest of the year is going to, shake out. They might be waiting to see how those internal changes play out, how the competitive landscape evolves, what happens with the economy. So before, committing to like a full year number, they might just be, taking a slightly more cautious approach.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, right? Now let's talk about their share buyback program. The report mentions they're spending $1 billion to buy back their own stock. What's the strategy behind that? Why are they doing that?
Yes, the buyback. That's a classic move. A lot of companies use this. It's a way to, kind of signal confidence, potentially boost shareholder value. So basically, when a company buys back its own shares, it reduces the number of shares that are out there, which can increase the earnings per share, for those remaining shares.
So it's almost like they're like putting their money where their mouth is. Like they believe in their own, future prospects enough to invest in themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's a way of saying, "Hey, we think our stock is undervalued right now, and we're willing to bet on ourselves."
I like that. I like that. Speaking of bets, the analysts' opinions in this report are, I mean, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You've got some analysts lowering their price targets after the earnings miss, which makes sense, but then others are actually, wait for it, raising their targets. It's like they can't agree on what's going to happen.
It's true, and it really, I think, highlights the uncertainty around TTD right now. Some analysts they're laser focused on those near-term risks, the execution challenges, competition from Amazon, that potential economic slowdown. Those are the things that are making them, maybe a little more cautious. But then you have other analysts who are taking like a longer term view. They're really looking at that growth potential in areas like CTV, audio, and retail media, and they believe that TTD is, well positioned to capitalize on those trends, even with some bumps in the road.
So it's like the bulls and the bears, they're duking it out, trying to figure out who's right.
hmm
But how do we make sense of all these, these conflicting views as investors?
Well, I think it's important to look at that average price target. Even with, some analysts lowering their targets, the average is still significantly higher than where TTD stock is trading right now.
Okay, so the consensus, if there is one, seems to be that there's still some room for TTD's stock to grow, even with all the risks we've been talking about.
Yeah, that seems to be the general sentiment. But as always, it's crucial to do your own research, right? Consider all the factors before making any investment decisions. Don't just rely on what the analysts are saying.
Yeah.
Dig into the company's financials, understand their strategy, assess the risks, the opportunities, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Solid advice. Don't just follow the herd. Think for yourself. All right. So let's kind of recap what we've learned about TTD today. I mean, they definitely had a bit of a stumble, right? That recent earnings miss. It was a bit of a shocker, but they are taking action to course correct. They've
Yeah.
restructured the company. They've embraced agile development, and they're really working on those relationships with the big brands through the JBPs. And then on top of all that, they're betting big on what they see as the future of advertising,
hmm
CTV, audio, retail media, all that, all while trying to push for a more open internet.
Yeah, that's a great summary. I think you really captured the essence of where TTD is right now. It's a company at a crossroads, facing some real challenges, but also with some really exciting opportunities ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes it so interesting to talk about, right? They've got the potential for this huge growth, but there are also some real, legitimate risks to consider. And as we've seen, even the experts are divided on what the future actually holds for TTD.
It's a fascinating case study for sure. Really highlights just how dynamic the stock market can be, right?
Absolutely. Now, here's a question for you, our listeners. What stands out to you about TTD? Like, what do you find, I don't know, maybe most intriguing or concerning after hearing all of this? Would you consider investing in this company? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always curious to hear what our listeners think. There's so much to learn from different perspectives.
Absolutely. And hey, remember, folks, This is just one deep dive into TTD. There's a ton of information out there, so make sure you do your own research, consider all the angles, and then, make the decision that's right for you. Don't just take our word for it.
That's right. Investing is a journey, it's not a destination. Keep learning, keep exploring, keep those investing minds sharp.
I love that. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final kind of thought to ponder. The report, it mentioned that there's a chance that Google might actually like completely exit the open internet. Now, if that happens, could TTD be like the biggest winner? It's something to think about, right?
Wow, that is a provocative thought. I mean, the implications of that would be huge, right? Like for the entire digital advertising landscape, it would definitely be interesting to see, how TTD might, try to capitalize on an opportunity like that.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there. And if you found this deep dive helpful and want to explore more investment opportunities with us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any future episodes.
Yes, we really appreciate you joining us on this journey of discovery. Until next time, happy investing.